Thank you very much. First of all, good morning to you all and greetings from Sweden and Europe. Although very distant apart, you should know that we have a lot of similarities, not only that our autumns are very beautiful with all the colors, but also the stable democracies, even though, of course, Sweden is much smaller in population than South Korea. We have actually done the same kind of trip from coming out of poverty, getting growth, getting healthier, getting better living conditions for our populations, relating to growth and to be open to trade. So we are very distant apart, but in many instances very close to each other. I'm going to talk about change. Change is very often something described as 100% positive. My experience is that people love change as long as it has nearly no impact on themselves. So change is needed for other people, not for me. When change comes to yourself, I've seen many people get stressed and nervous because they have not been well prepared. They have not understood what is coming. Therefore, I think it's important to relate to the global changes that we see, and out of that, draw 5 conclusions which links to individual when it comes to educational system and the labor market. The first, I think, obvious on a day when we have midterm elections in the United States, is the fact that we have a geopolitical power shift in the world between the United States and China. It relates, of course, to an increasing risk of a trade war between the two giants, but it has an impact that is actually global. It has an impact on the trading conditions also for other parts of the world. And of course, the question is the world moving away from a rules-based open world trade system that we have lived with since the Second World War over to a system where countries declare their own country's interest first above everything else and engage in protectionism? This is far more important than just related to one country. Why? Because, especially for open economies like South Korea and Sweden, I've seen all these entrepreneurs with their growing companies, and very early on in their career, they become export-oriented. Why? Because the home market is too small. So you must be able to sell your products, and in the future also services and your digital services to others. Therefore, you need to meet good rule-based conditions when you trade cross-border. If the new world is creating new and higher thresholds to come into different markets, this might impact our labor markets and especially our biggest companies. The multinational companies that are very often our champions and that we think are forever there to be stronger, but they rely heavily on open trade, which is now put in question. Secondly, and this has also been mentioned now already a few times, what is called the fourth technological revolution. We have, of course, a rapid technological change in the world. This is also very often described as something with just possibilities, just positive. I see, of course, this. There is a lot of new jobs, there is a lot of new innovations that comes out of this. You could see a lot of young people actually starting up with new ideas. I think that's fascinating. But it's also very good in the English language to describe it as disruptive. The ways we have been doing things will not work anymore. It's disruptive in the sense that it shortens the lifespan of all markets, of all companies, of all what we have thought to be safe jobs. Why? Because the changes in the economy will come with an increase in speed, and what very often has been done with manual labor will in the future be done with artificial intelligence and with robots. So the shift is more dramatic than we think, and it has not fully happened yet. I saw a tryout to see the implication on the American labor market. It was an Oxford study who said that might be as much as 47% of the jobs that we have today that actually will be totally gone or totally different in 20 years. We recalculated this on European labor markets and my home labor market of Sweden, and we found the impact to be even greater. So we are talking more than 50% of the jobs gone in 20 years or totally different. This does not mean that we will not see new jobs emerge in other parts of the economy, but the question you must ask yourself, is these new jobs open to the ones who lost the jobs that now are gone? Are the individuals movable from one job to another? So I'm not saying we will have less jobs. The question is, what's the impact on the individual level for each and every one of us? When change knocks on your door, are you ready for the digital transformation? And the fact is that a lot of people are not. And instead of trying to embrace and understand what comes, they become part of a movement we see around the world of anti-globalization, saying, this is not about me. This is not my future. It's not creating anything good for me. And we see them getting angry in the voting boxes of Europe, United States, and throughout the world. So don't think this is a little question. This is the question on how to make inclusive labor markets, inclusive impacts of what is, first of all, something very good. But the biggest change, the biggest global change of all, is to mankind itself. It has been mentioned that we have a rapid world growth of the population. We are now at 7.5 billion inhabitants on this world, and we will grow up to 10, maybe 11 billion at the end of this century. But as you know, this is done asymmetrically. It's not done evenly in all countries. We already see a standstill in the most developed parts of the world, like Europe, China, linked to the peak child phenomena. The more developed an economy becomes, the less children born by women. Therefore, the situation in Europe is a de facto decrease of the population. It's a standstill of 500 million, but the population as such is decreasing. Until 2050, with the aging of the population, we will have 85 million less in the labor force in European countries 2050 compared to now. If you think that's a huge impact, look at China. The decrease is over 200 million people moving out from the labor market into pension age. This is an enormous transformation in our time, and it comes asymmetrically. The growth of the world population will be concentrated to the least developed part of the world, and after 2050, only concentrated to the African continent, where in many of the African countries we will face an increase of the population which is fivefold compared to today. So it's a totally new world order where you will find the African population at the end of this century come close to the population of Asia. Have we prepared for this? Have we understand what kind of challenges this will create to sustainability, to our labor markets? I think already we have a discussion of shortages of labor supply in Europe and United States. This is only the beginning, given what we see ahead. At the same time, my experts at home tell me that in the most developed part of the world, it might be that half of the children now born in Sweden will live to be 100 years old. So now, welcome the 100-year life. It will be not just one or two odd survivors that will see their own 100th birthday. This will be for very many people. And the enormous increase of older people is really the biggest transformation that we have ahead. When we move from 7.5 up to 10, 11 billion people, there will be no more children, no more teenagers, and they will redistribute more to Africa, less in Europe and in Asia. No more 30-year-olds, no more 40-year-olds. The increase is in above ages of 60, taking real increase when you come above the age of 80. If this is true, if everything I've now said is going to happen, then we must draw conclusions. What's the impact on the individual level, on the labor market, and on our educational system? And I have 5 conclusions. The first one, there is no such thing as an identity linked to your job that you choose when you're young and never, ever change during your lifespan. Very often we have the idea that we take a decision as young to become a teacher, to become a policeman. That's part of our identity, an identity we bring through our lives and which becomes very important to us because it's who we are. So if people ask, who are you? You answer by telling what you work with, which is of course only part of your identity. But if I now told the truth about everything that is disruptive, what about half of the jobs gone in 20 years? And that's your identity. That means the identity will get lost for a lot of people. We must therefore be clear to people saying, your job is not your identity. It's your ability to work that is part of your identity. That is how we open up to rethinking, reskilling, retraining people. Don't say that you are something that you can't change. And since it's linked to identity, it's tougher. It sits deeper with people. If this is true, there is no such thing as a once-in-a-lifetime education part done in young years, which is never to be done again. The idea that we have longer and longer educational systems, preschool, school, high schools, and then universities, but we do it only once. And thereafter, we think, after leaving universities, if we have done so, we think we can live on that through our entire working career, never to see a school book anymore. That's also the wrong perception. Because what we used to learn, if the transformation is as big as I have described, well, it will be obsolete in 10 and absolutely obsolete in 20 years. You must be able to reskill and retrain also when it comes to educational efforts. And we don't have the structures for this. We just think we should add on more years when we are young. But I think it's equally important now to get educational systems. It could be public ones, but it could also be linked inside our companies, where we actually try to get more skills, update ourselves to stay employable also in the future. If this is true, the idea that talent is something you have when you're young once, and you're either successful or then it's gone, is also totally wrong. But that's how we recruit people. We think that we should seek them out at universities, the one with the top scores coming out of universities, that's the one we want to employ. The one person better than the others that we could form and see growing inside our company. That was yesterday. Talent is now something which is open all through your life. You could be a talent at 25, you can be a talent at 45, you could be a talent at 65. It's more your mindset. Have you taken the decision to stay open, to take in new impulses, and to start over and over again in your life with new careers? You could actually reinstall yourself as a talent at different ages. This is a main point when it comes to recruitment, because if talent can be a 45-year-old restarting a second career with a new identity after reskilling, well, then we have a totally new perception of talents. Talents all through life. And then we should not just only focus on getting the youngest ones, but actually different ages. This is also important because the impact on the labor market of that is that also older people see that the only way to get a chance at a career is not just being a talent at 28. I could actually get a job, a restart at 45. And just to remind you, what defines a talent at 28 might be very different when you're 45 or you're 55. You have a life experience. As you know, nothing is that simple in life. It's not just a success. You might see trouble. You might have private problems. You might have friends, families, children that run into trouble. This gives you new experiences and creates you more interesting, a kind of talent that knows a lot of things which you don't know when you're young. One thing, though, that is very important, if you're 50, 55 and want to be a talent, don't tell people that the only thing you want to tell them is what you used to do. People are not interested in that. Tell them what you aim to do still in the future, in the years to come. And be humble. Say, I'm not perfect at everything. I understand that 20-year-olds are technically more skilled and advanced than I am, but I'm open to learn, and I'm interested. That is creating more of a talent that others can see. We don't like people who say, well, I've learned everything I need, I know everything I need to know, and I'm just here to tell you the story. Not interesting. Not interesting. Be humble, be more employable by also being open to move yourself, to add your skills. If all of this is true, then the idea that the smartest thing you can do, which is very spread here in South Korea and also my country, Sweden, is not to be employed by the #1 biggest company in the country. Why? Well, because the biggest companies are the most likely to be disruptive by the challenges you will see in the markets that is now emerging. Their success will be challenged by others, because that's the idea with the new atmosphere for entrepreneurs, the new ideas emerging. They are looking at the front runners. How did they get successful? How do I reshape the market? And therefore, most of these very big companies that we see today will probably have to downscale themselves in the future. I've seen this happen already with multinational companies in Sweden, and young people think, if I just get a job there, then I'm safe for life. And I can tell you, you have no idea. They might not even be around 20 years from now. Therefore, we must signal that we can not only look at big companies as a way of getting job security in what is now going to be the labor market of the future. No, now you must focus much more on startups, on entrepreneurial projects, what is coming from behind, what is growing out of the grass, because they are more likely to survive at least a little bit longer. So, if all of this is true, we must also shift our perspective when it comes to labor market policy. I was grown up in an atmosphere that the idea was by driving demand, pushing in demand into the economy, when there come a slowdown in the economy, which we always will see, we thought by pushing in demand we could save the jobs. The problem is that it's a little bit shaky now, but soon it will be back again the way it was. We have learned that that's not true anymore. The global changes I've described will not recreate jobs as they were, but as something completely different. Therefore, we must shift focus from increasing demand broadly in the economy to incentivizing individuals to become employable, to reskilling, to retraining. Focus on the individuals, on their motivation, on their ability to see possibilities throughout life. And throughout life, meaning if we live to be 100 years old, probably to push also older people to stay in the workforce with incentives. We had specific tax breaks in Sweden for 65 plus to stay in the labor market, and they have answered to the incentives because they do. When they get more money out of working, and when they could also ask of the employer actually not to work as much as before, but still be part of the workforce, we saw a doubling of the percentage of people above the age of 65 actually keep on working in the workforce. This is just the beginning. If we do all of this, then we will meet the changes by preparing individuals for what is about to come. If we do so, we will have greater support for what we call globalization, fourth industrial revolution. Then it's not just something said by an elite at conferences that do not relate to ordinary people. If we don't do this, then reactions we see out in the voter boxes of the world will continue and increase. So it's extremely important to do this right. Thank you.